Hello and welcome to the program. I hate to say it, but it seems like every other week there's another story about police here in North Texas busting up a human trafficking ring. Just last month, the U.S. Department of Justice broke up a major sex trafficking ring that was operating throughout Collin County, arresting suspects who are accused of recruiting women to become escorts and then forcing those women into prostitution. This is a crime that many people think happens in other countries, in other neighborhoods. But as we have found out over the years, this crime is happening where we live, right under our noses, with arrests happening in zip codes that people would say are, quote, nice neighborhoods. I bring this up because the month of January has been Human Trafficking Awareness Month. It's a time to raise awareness about the issue and to let us all know how we can do our part to combat modern-day slavery. Here in our area, we have an incredible nonprofit that helps those who have been trafficked, and that agency is New Friends, New Life. Their mission is to restore and empower formerly trafficked girls and exploited women and children. Joining me on the phone is Bianca Davis, and Bianca is the Chief Executive Officer of New Friends, New Life. Bianca, thank you so much for being on the program today.
It's so great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Bianca, is it me or is this crime just becoming more prevalent, or is it just that we're hearing more about it?
I think it's a combination of both. We know that human trafficking is a pervasive crime in our community, but what's also happening is there is an increased focus on holding perpetrators accountable and providing support for victims. So I think that lends itself to looking like there is an explosion of the crime itself, but that's really law enforcement and legislative agencies and agencies like New Friends, New Life getting involved and connecting on being a part of the solution that's showing up as an increase. So it's actually a good sign that we're hearing about it more. You know, I liken it to, for those of us who will try like a new skincare routine, you put on a cleanser and you may notice that you're now having acne or a little bit of a rash. And a lot of times that's just because the product, it's a new product that's now irritating the impurities to get them out. And I think that that's what's happening with the influx of human trafficking cases in the news. It's because we are agitating the issue, trying new procedures, new techniques, and that's really making a difference.
The Department of Homeland Security, Bianca, has been very, very clear that they need our help as a community to end this crime. What can people do to help stop human trafficking and sex trafficking?
You know, it's so important for community members to realize that we are each other's eyes and ears, and that any outcry that we make or anything that we notice that we share, it can potentially, save someone's life. So for the everyday layperson, it's just being aware of what those signs are, educating yourself on what you can look for. But more importantly, it starts in the home, because we know that the average age that a girl is trafficked in the United States is just 15 years old. We know that teenagers are the number one target population for this crime. And so it's parents being very vigilant on who your children are talking to online and making sure that the lines of communication are open in the home so that that child knows that there's absolutely no situation that they can get themselves into that the parent won't, help them out of and receive them from being a part of. That's really the way that we can make a difference, because it is starting with our young children that the perpetrator is after.
When it comes to this issue of human trafficking and sex trafficking, I mentioned at the beginning of the show, a lot of people have this idea that it happens in third world countries far away from us or in so-called bad zip codes, but that's simply not the case. We see in Collin County, in Plano, in Frisco, in these so-called nice neighborhoods that it's happening.
Yes, it is pervasive, and it doesn't matter your zip code or your socioeconomic status. It can happen right in our own backyard, and we are seeing that, as you mentioned, in Airbnbs, in nice neighborhoods. It really is everywhere. And I think it's important for us to understand that, because I've heard this phrase, and it just resonates with me. What we misdiagnose, we will mistreat. So if we're just looking for something overseas or impacting an immigrant or someone in a seedy part of town, we're going to miss the crime happening right in our own backyard.
What are signs, Bianca, that people should be on the lookout for? You're on the front lines, you and New Friends, New Life. What should we look out for?
So we can start, as I mentioned a little earlier, with the people you know and love, people who may be in your household, children or a partner. If you are seeing, for example, with teens, if you have a child who all of a sudden has cash that you didn't provide, or maybe she has a new piece of jewelry that has someone's name or initials. She is now acting withdrawn. She's spending an inordinate amount of time online. Or she may have older friends. She may have older male friends, but it can also be female friends. Anything that's out of the ordinary, any shift in her behavior, those are some of the signs that you can look for that may ask the question, is she in a relationship with someone or is she interacting with someone? If you are out and about just in the community, one of the ways we have been able to provide training and support is by industry. A few weeks ago, earlier this month, New Friends, New Life went to American Airlines and spoke to employees alongside Homeland Security. We did a joint training for, flight attendants and baggage handlers and just anyone who was available to tune in from American Airlines to talk about what it looks like in the airline industry. So that can look like someone showing up without luggage, or someone else has their identification. They're not appropriately dressed for where they're heading. They won't make eye contact. They have inconsistent stories. So those are examples in the airline industry, or if you are at the airport, of some of the things you can look for. We also do training in healthcare facilities to talk about the same thing. So if you work in a hospital, especially if you're in the ER and someone comes in and they're likely going to be with their trafficker or someone who was sent to watch them, and they can't explain their injuries, or they once again don't have their identification, the story's not adding up, they seem afraid. This is the signal for the provider to try and get that person alone to ask them if they're okay. And I think that's the important message, that we stay away from the urge to intervene or to approach the situation, because that can put everyone in danger. If the trafficker feels like there is a threat, who knows what their response will be? And also, you're not going to get the valid response from the victim, because he or she is going to be absolutely terrified. So if you ask the victim in front of someone else, are you okay? Of course she's going to say she's fine. She's not going to say she's at risk of being beaten. So we implore the public to not get involved, but to reach out, to take as much detail information as you can, and then call the human trafficking hotline number. Or if you witness a crime taking place, if someone's being assaulted, a visible crime is happening, of course, call 911.
And that human trafficking hotline that you mentioned, that number is 1-888-373-7888, or you can text Be Free to 233-733. Are TV shows like Law and Order Special Victims Unit, are those kind of shows, Bianca, helping to raise awareness about this issue?
It depends on what they cover. So what we've seen, like, for example, with the movie Taken that just about everyone has seen. And, it's a 17-year-old going overseas and she's kidnapped by these Albanian mobsters. If the movie or the show has that type of content, it can be misleading, because that's not typically how human trafficking happens here in the United States. Have there been instances of kidnapping? Of course. And are they terrible and scary and just as criminal? Of course. But what we see most of the time is a more subtle invasion into someone's life, someone who's coming to fill a need, someone who shows up as a boyfriend, or someone who can help them out of a situation. So if we're watching movies or videos that show this sensationalized, extremely physically violent or kidnapping-based content, it can make us misdefine the term and miss how it's happening. So I would say it depends on the content. It can help if it shows how systemic and subtle it is, but we have to do a lot of re-educating if someone looks at a movie or a series and is thinking, I need to watch out for white vans in a parking lot.
I think that that's one great thing that you do at New Friends, New Life on your website, newfriendsnewlife.org, is you have educational resources that can actually help parents or guardians protect their teen girls or the young women in their household. My guest once again is Bianca Davis, the Chief Executive Officer of New Friends, New Life, a nonprofit that restores and empowers formerly trafficked and sexually exploited teen girls, women, and their children, providing access to education, to job training, mental health resources, and spiritual support. The month of January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. So today, we're highlighting the issue and also talking about ways that we can all have a part in not just cracking down on human trafficking, but helping the victims. And that is what New Friends, New Life does. NewFriendsNewLife.org is their website. So let's talk about the programs that you offer at New Friends, New Life.
Yes, I get so excited when I talk about the services that we offer because we're really transforming survivors' lives long term. They literally can turn their lives around and go in the direction of their dreams. And we organize our programs into 3 areas. The first is our women's program. We will always be an agency that serves women who have been trafficked and exploited because that's how we started. When an exotic dancer walked into a local church about 26 years ago now and said, "Can you please help me?" And the women who were gathered at that church, they had no idea what it meant. Human trafficking didn't become a federal crime until the year 2000.
Wow.
We are very young in this nation at solving this issue at the federal level. So this was before any of that was in play. That group of women just knew that a woman needed help and they provided that support. And she kept bringing all of her friends out of the local strip clubs. And so our women's program provides immediate support for, like, what are you eating? Where are you sleeping? How are you physically taking care of yourself through her case management needs? Then we look at her counseling needs. So many survivors have experienced childhood abuse, domestic violence. They have emotional and mental trauma, and we have experts on staff who work to unpack those traumas and help them to heal in a very therapeutic, strategic way. And then the final piece is the economic empowerment. How do we now get this woman to a position where she is financially stable, she has safe housing, she has a career or a job that's going to provide for her needs? And so that's what we do in our women's program. The second phase of our programming is for our young girls and our youth. So we serve teen girls or youth ages 12 to 22 in our Youth Resource Center. And what I love about the YRC is it's not only serving those who have been trafficked, but it is preventative. So girls who come through our YRC program, they may not have been trafficking victims yet, but they're showing those vulnerabilities. So if they've come from backgrounds of poverty or they've experienced childhood sexual abuse, if they're in the foster care system, that's one of the major pipelines for trafficking because someone who is aging out of foster care a lot of times doesn't have the resources around her. She doesn't feel loved. And so that person is waiting for her once she ages out of the process. So if they're showing vulnerabilities, they can enroll in our program. And the hope is that they can leave without ever becoming victimized. That through the support at New Friends, New Life in the YRC, they're fortified against the wiles of the trafficker. And then the third and final piece is our work with men and boys. We know that if men are the perpetrators or the traffickers in most instances, and if men are the buyers, then we have to work with our men and boys to shift that conversation so that we don't continue to create a world where it's okay to purchase another human being.
It's not something that young boys are taught oftentimes. They often joke about it in the locker rooms about women and objectify them, and that's something that's taught.
Yes, and you use a very important word because the objectification is what makes it okay. I read a report that said the average buyer is a 45-year-old male. 66% of the time he's married and he has disposable income. And that's really our everyday guy. And so that person doesn't wake up at the age of 45 and say, today I'm going to go on this website or today I'm going to make a phone call and someone's going to be here for my use and abuse. There are so many steps along the way. And so our communication with boys is very age appropriate. It's about healthy relationships. To your point, what about the locker room talk? Is there bullying in your conversation? Are you degrading women or girls in the way you communicate? Very age appropriate for them to start connecting the dots on their level so that as they grow into men, they don't have this idea that, oh, she's just an object. She's just a thing that I can use. So it's a very important piece of the puzzle if we're ever going to reduce the demand, because it is the men and the boys that are driving the demand, whether knowingly or unknowingly, by participating in watching pornography, by, of course, engaging in the crime of purchasing another human being. So we have to end the demand.
Coming up in just a few weeks, one of the biggest sporting events, and what people may not realize is that whenever there is a big sporting event, law enforcement is on high alert for victims of human trafficking because traffickers will go where the customers are, which is another reason why it's so important to educate young men about what is truly going on. This is not a victimless crime, and there's that mindset among men that the women that are in this line of work, that they're doing it voluntarily or have always done it voluntarily.
Absolutely. The magic formula is men with money. So, yes, it can be a sporting event, but it also can be a software conference. It also can be a church conference. It does not matter. Where there is a gathering of men with money, we see a spike in the crime of human trafficking. As a matter of fact, the World Economic Forum took place earlier in January in Davos, Switzerland, and there was an article that came out about the increase of the sex trade happening around the World Economic Forum. This is a group of world leaders, business leaders, politicians who are gathering, and they are noticing an uptick in that activity. Now, in that area of Switzerland, it is legalized, so that's a whole other discussion about that. But what we know is legalization does not prevent victimization. It does not prevent exploitation or abuse. It is just a term that is used to give legal right, or legal way to what is truly a crime against another person.
You're doing the educational outreach to men and young boys. What about the community education outreach that you're doing to young girls? Are you in the schools doing age-appropriate conversations to how to protect themselves?
Yes, we also have those conversations with our young girls. One of the organizations we work with a lot is the Young Men's Service League. So these are moms and their sons. And we also work with a National Charity League, which is moms and their daughters. So that's an example of where we would go to a meeting and the boys will be in one room and they are hearing from their perspective how they can be good guys and how they can make a difference and how they can act as gentlemen in their communities. And the women and the girls are learning at the same time about healthy boundaries and what's not okay and when they can reach out for help and how they can see through the smoke screen, especially if it is how they're communicating online. So we do always want to share, and we work to share with girls how they can keep their antennas up. But, it seems unfair, and it happens with every crime that's disproportionately affecting women and girls, is that the onus is always put on the woman or the girl when we should be holding the men responsible. I always think of the crime of sexual assault. And, the question's always asked, well, what was she wearing? Yeah. And what time of night was it? When the real question is, how did you think that it was okay to forcefully do this to another person? So, yes, it's always frustrating, but we do understand, and we want to make sure that our girls aren't just blindly stepping into these traps when maybe they can do something or have an awareness that can keep them safe.
If you want more information about the programs that Bianca has been talking about, the men's advocacy group and their educational outreach that they do in the community, go to the website newfriendsnewlife.org. My guest once again, Bianca Davis. She is the Chief Executive Officer of New Friends New Life. They are a nonprofit that restores and empowers formerly trafficked and sexually exploited teen girls, women, and their children, providing access to education, to job training, mental health resources, and spiritual support. The month of January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. So today we're highlighting this issue and talking about ways that we can have a part in not just cracking down on human trafficking, but helping the victims as well. Once again, the website, newfriendsnewlife.org. Bianca, what do you wish more people knew about the women that you serve?
Oh, this is another topic that just absolutely lights me up. I wish people knew just how much more like us than different from us survivors of trafficking are. It's easy if you see someone who's on a corner or working in a club, it's easy to think, one, that that was her choice, and that because it's her choice, she's just making bad choices, and you tend to make a moral judgment on a woman like that. But when you realize that there are these puppet strings behind the scenes that have forced her into this situation, and then when she comes out of that environment and steps into a place like New Friends New Life, you get to see that she's just a mom, she's just an aunt or a grandmother or a sister. She's just like us. The other day, one of our ladies came down the hall, and I was in a meeting, but she waited outside my door. And I stepped out, and she just shoved the certificate in my face, and she's just standing there beaming. She had completed her 90-day sobriety program at Nexus, which is one of our partner agencies. We work with Nexus Recovery because so many survivors are also experiencing substance abuse. And so she had gone through her 90 days, and she brought the certificate and waited for me so that I can see it. And the look on her face, it was just the most amazing thing. They are so proud, so courageous, and they're also so grateful. You can tell every time we have an event or anytime they see us on the news, they are so proud. They will say, I saw you last night. You know, you did such a great job. Thanks for representing us. I wish people knew that. I'm also so proud of the city of Dallas. On January 11th every year, it's Wear Blue Day in recognition of Human Trafficking Awareness Month. January 11th has been deemed Wear Blue Day by the Department of Homeland Security. And for the first time ever, this past January 11th, Dallas, the skyline was lit up in blue. Yeah. So we worked with the city, and the Omni Dallas was blue, the Reunion Tower was lit in blue, and the Bank of America building, three of the most iconic buildings in the Dallas skyline, were all blue on January 11th. And that just says so much about how we as a city are just coming together on this issue. It says to the survivor that we see you, and it also says to the bad guys, we see you too. And it's only a matter of time. We're not going to allow this issue to fester in our community. So I was so proud to see that.
Bianca, how much deprogramming has to take place when a victim comes to New Friends, New Life, whether they're 12 years old or already in their 40s and are leaving that life?
So much has to happen. You know, the biggest piece of that, or the first piece of the deprogramming, is for them to even understand and identify as a human trafficking victim. Because what they are seeing is, you know, I loved him. He was my boyfriend. We were doing this because he needed help with the rent. All of the lies that he told her blinds her to even seeing that a crime was being committed against her. And so we spend a lot of time in counseling and therapy initially after the intake, helping her to understand the role or the position she plays in this puzzle, and helps her to identify as a victim who is worthy and qualified for resources, support, and a different life. So it depends on the amount of trauma, but if someone who's been in the life for 20 years and she walks into our office, it takes quite a while. It takes a lot of expert unpacking of her trauma to get her to understand and to get her to move forward. So it is not a linear process. Neither is it a short-term process. It takes a lot of time to turn your life around. and our women display that by their commitment to the program, which can take, even up to 2 years to fully graduate from our women's program.
How can the community help you, Bianca? How can the community help New Friends, New Life?
We are so grateful for the community's support. You can support us, of course, by donating financially so that we can continue providing our programs. And you can also support us by donating your time. Your time is so valuable to us. We have a new initiative that groups are participating in. We have opened Liberty Street Garden, which is a garden that's in the community of the historic Wilson District. It was funded by the Meadows Foundation, and it's in partnership with Bonton Farms. But our women get to work in the garden. They get to earn an income. They get to develop their employment skills. But it's an acre of land where volunteers can come and help us as well. So we have seen great success in the volunteer program at Liberty Street Garden. I think it's such a fun way, when the weather's great, to come out and help plant and harvest and just really help grow that program. So volunteering through Liberty Street Garden or any of the other opportunities we have at New Friends, New Life would be a great way for the community to help. And you can see all of that on our website.
And that's newfriendsnewlife.org. That's the website. So what are some solutions that lawmakers can enact? Because I know you do a lot of advocacy as well. What are some solutions lawmakers can enact to help stop this issue of human trafficking and sex trafficking?
Yes, I think lawmakers it's such a huge issue. It's so complex and layered, but piece by piece, we are making a difference. And so I just think continuing to take off those bite-sized chunks wherever you can to make a difference. Some examples of that, in 2021, Texas became the first state in the country to make buying sex a felony, which is huge. It puts pressure on the buyer to show that there are consequences. As you mentioned, this is not a victimless crime. And so that was an important landmark change for us to enact that law. Texas also increased the age to work in a sexually oriented business like a bar or a club from 18 to 21. That helps because a lot of survivors, as I mentioned earlier, who are coming out of the foster care system are very vulnerable to being trafficked and exploited. So she's 18 and she can work as a waitress in a club. We know it's only a matter of time before she becomes a victim. So increasing that age to 21 adds a bit of a buffer. We're grateful for that. And then Dallas recently enacted a law closing strip clubs from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. That's a period of time where there was an increase in violent crimes and homicides, including homicides around strip clubs. And so shutting them between those hours just gives the community a respite. It may save someone's life to have those clubs closed within those hours. So those are some of the laws that have already been enacted. Some of the things that we're working on now is considering the context. So many victims of trafficking end up with a criminal record, not only because they've been picked up for prostitution, but maybe they were forced to commit other crimes. It could be petty theft. It could be writing hot checks, things that they were doing basically to try and save their life. Because if you don't meet your trafficker's financial demand, who knows what's in store for you, right? And so helping or giving judges an understanding of the context of when and why and how these crimes were committed is something that we are, as a field, looking to provide input on to hopefully give some respite and relief to trafficking victims who are then saddled with these crimes when they had no choice.
I want to thank my guest today, Bianca Davis, the Chief Executive Officer of New Friends, New Life, a nonprofit here in North Texas. Their mission to restore and empower trafficked and sexually exploited teen girls, women, and children. They provide them with access to education, to job training, mental health resources, spiritual support, and so much more. And they raise awareness about the issue of human trafficking and its prevalence here in our area. The month of January has been Human Trafficking Awareness Month, so I really wanted to highlight the work that Bianca and her team at New Friends, New Life has been doing. If you want more information about volunteer opportunities, how you can help, the education resources, go to newfriendsnewlife.org. Bianca, thank you so much for taking time out to be on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this message to your listeners. It really means a lot to us, and it means a lot to the city in this fight.